Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host Rob, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the new Army of Renown for the Stormcast Eternals character Ionis Cryptborn, which is very cool, and we're going to be looking at his new War Scroll, which has just dropped on WarhammerCommunity.com. So, here's the War Scroll, and this War Scroll can be featured, will be featured, and all the information we found in the new upcoming Dawnbringers book. So it's going to be Dawnbringers 3, The Long Hunt. And this is now currently going to be on pre-order this weekend as well, as part of like an Army of Renown box with 2 Stormdrake Guard, which is quite fun. But we'll talk about the Army of Renown and the other stuff in a minute. Let's just talk about Ionis Cryptborn first. He does have a very interesting, imaginative, and kind of creepy backstory. We'll talk about that after. But he is a returning character from the beginning of Age of Sigmar 1. We have talked about this already, but we think a lot of the Age of Sigmar stuff is going to do a Primaris on us, where we're going to see some of the original Age of Sigmar Stormcast stuff get kind of like, pushed out. It's going to become go across the Primaris. Does that make sense? The Stormcast stuff across the Primaris. That's what it's going to be. That's exactly what's going to happen. Okay, so that's what we're seeing, and he quite clearly looks like, a Space Marine character, but he's on a dragon, which is fun. And the dragon is a named character. And he's got 16 wounds, 3 up armor save, and he moves 14 inches. And this is actually really important. That move 14 is really good, really strong, really good, because he's got like an AoE 12-inch aura, so it's going to be 26 inches, which we'll talk about in a second. But move 14, we really like. 3 up armor save, we really like. That's really good. And then 16 wounds is also great. So even if he takes a ton of damage, putting some heals in and some other stuff, he could like life tank quite nicely. There's no ward save on this model, so his survivability is not bad, but it's not great. Okay, and he's 400 points before we talk any further about it. 400 points, and he's got the leader and behemoth key role, battlefield role, and he's also a single and unique. Unique characters can't take generic enhancements from the main red book, so he's obviously going to be a priest, and when we talk about that, that means he's not going to be able to take things like curse, so something to talk about later. Okay, so what's he like in combat? Well, Games Workshop hates melee characters. I don't know why. Like, they wrote like 3 that were like legit. They were like Sigvald, definitely smashed it. The Light of Altharion for Lumineth Realm Lords, smashed it. And then they were like, Gotrek obviously nailed it. But like, this guy has got 4 attacks with his main weapon, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2. So he's got the same output as like an Ogre Glutton, which is kind of okay, but like, bleh. And then the dragon's got 5 attacks that are damage 2, and then he's also got 2 more attacks that are damage 3. So I would not consider him to be something you take as like a combat piece, like you would something like Sigvald. He's definitely more in the support role, who also does some combat, but definitely not a main feature, and probably loses to quite a lot of stuff actually, but is very, very survivable, very, very tanky, which is good. Okay, so let's talk about that, shall we? Because he's got some rules for being like more like survivable. He's got this scry intent. Subtract 1 from attack characteristic of melee weapons that target this unit to a minimum of 1, which is good. This is really, really good. So now he's going to be in a much more survivable position because he's not going to take as many attacks coming in. We love that. Yeah, there's no ward save on this guy, which is a bit of a shame. But if we look at his keywords, you can see that he isn't locked to any of the sub-factions for Stormcast. So if you were going to run him purely in Stormcast, which we're going to talk about when we at the end of the battle scroll, war scroll, you could obviously put him with Gardas, and Gardas could do a 5-up ward save, which I think is good. Not bad. All right, so he's got some other special rules. He's got a weird shooting attack called the Spirit Scouring Flames. Each time a wound is caused by the Spirit Scouring Flames, that unit has become soul burned. If at the end of each hero phase, so it's the end of each hero phase in each turn, so it actually does a lot more damage than you might think, because it's going to be twice a battle round. You roll a dice for each unit that's soul burned, and if the roll is equal to or lower than the current battle round, incredibly wordy rule, then they suffer D3 mortal wounds. If you heal or have any abilities that heal a unit, when you do heal a unit, you remove your soul burned curse. Now, it's 9 attacks with the Spirit Scouring Flames. This is the ranged attack that causes the soul burning. you could maybe split those up. So, like, do 3 shots of 3, or like 3 shots there, 3 shots there, 3 shots there. So you do it 3 times and try to like soul burn a unit. But this is weirdly really strong at the end of the game and not that good in the middle. But like, on turn 2, a third of the time you'll be doing D3 mortal wounds. I don't know. It feels like it's a bit of a nothing burger. It's definitely not. It's definitely not the reason you're going to take it. One of the really good things about this unit is he's got the Draconic Horror special rule. Enemy units cannot receive the Rally and Inspiring Presence commands while they're within 12 inches of this unit. So it's not wholly within 12 inches, it's within 12 inches. And this is really good. No Rally, no Inspiring Presence, a very tough character to get rid of. So, if you were to throw it up early in the first turn, get it involved in your opponent's army, have that big area of effect of 12 inches, that means that your enemy is going to really suffer. No Inspiring Presence is also really good into several different armies, and he's on a 100mm base. Thank you, chat. So it is a really big base, so it's going to affect a large amount of the board, which is good. So it's a really good rule, a really, really good rule. It doesn't seem like it's very strong when you read it. It's not like 5d6 mortal wounds, but it'll be very effective, in my opinion. Now, he's a priest. He's got the Arch Relictor special rule. Unsurprisingly, he's a priest. In your hero phase, this unit can chant 2 prayers, which is pretty good, that it knows instead of 1. And at the start of your hero phase, you must say how many prayers this unit will chant. And if you say 1, when you chant it, it automatically happens on a 6. And if you say 2, make chanting rolls for both. So you can always auto cast a prayer, or you can cast 2 prayers. Cast 2 prayers or auto cast 1 prayer. Now, there's a bit of a problem with Ionis Cryptborn, in that he has neither the Lord nor the Knight keyword. This is a bit of a problem, because if you go and look at the prayers, if you run for just Stormcast Eternals, like Divine Light, Translocation, and Blessed Weapons, they all dictate the range of the prayer's ability, depending on whether or not they have the Lord or the Knight keyword. And so Lord's Knights are 18 inches, and then Knights are like 12 inches, and like a Lord is 18 inches. So this is a bit of a problem for Ionis, because he either does all of the prayers at 0 inches, or he does all of the prayers at infinite, which is a bit of a problem. Me, as a TO, until Games Workshop FAQ it, would probably just say that he is a Lord character and can do them at the maximum range. And if you were to play in your friendly games until Games Workshop does FAQ it, I think that's a really sensible way to play it. If you wanted to be a little bit more, cautious, then you could play it at the Knight level, so you're just doing it at the most limited range. But either way, I would just pick one of those 2, discuss it with your opponent, and until it gets FAQ, just play it that way. He's also got another rule buried in the Arch Relictor thing, which is at the start of the enemy hero phase, you can pick 1 endless spell or invocation within 12 inches of this unit and roll a dice. On a 2+, that endless spell is dispelled or that invocation is banished. That's cool. That's good. Just the ability to just always shut down an endless spell is really good, and shutting down an invocation is even better, because that's going to stop Fire Slayers from getting their kind of auto grand strat. It's a genuine threat. Shutting down enemy invocations, it's really legit. Corn players crying right now into their cup of soups, because that's all they eat. That's an unnecessary attack on core players, but I'm taking it anyway. But like this is a really big. Thank you, Owen, in the chat. Like, this is a really big thing to be in the game now. The ability to banish invocations. So getting rid of endless spells, great. It's already pretty easy to do that with so many primal dice and stuff in the game already. But getting rid of invocations, huge. And then finally, he's got a prayer called Lightning Tempest, and this does have a range, so he can definitely invocate it, invocate it, pray for it. Anyway, it's cast on a 3 and it's a range of 18 inches. Pick an enemy unit, and then on a 3+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. Then you pick another unit within 3 inches. On a 3+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. Then you pick another unit within 3 inches of that second unit, and then on a 3+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. And if you roll any 1s and 2s, it just stops. A unit can't be affected more than once, so you can't have an infinite chain reaction. But it's just a way of spreading a bunch of mortal wounds around. So that's kind of his piece, his war scroll, before we talk about him in the Army of Renown. And actually, I think he could definitely see play in loads of different armies. I feel like you could play him in Stormcast Eternals, especially because of that ability to stop Inspiring Presence and Rally. There's a great list in Stormcast Eternals in a minute where you do a bunch of area of effect or AoE mortal wounds. So a Night Velexer with Meteoric Standard or like does a ton of mortal wounds in AoE, everyone within 6 inches, once per battle. And people are taking, 3 or 4 of those. And so you can do that, affect loads of units, and then have none of them be able to use Inspiring Presence, so maybe cause some battle shocks and get them off. Celestant Prime also does AoE mortal wounds as well. Things like Annihilators dropping down, they do that. Or if you wanted to run it another way and do a bunch of shooting in Stormcast Eternals, you could shoot a bunch of stuff and again have this guy kind of stand in the middle of the board, stopping them from being able to use Inspiring Presence and Rally, which feels honestly very good. And he's not a terrible fighter, and he's very survivable. In addition, he makes, at the 400 point mark, he makes a great ally in the new Cities of Sigmar range, especially because if you take him in something like Subfaction Lethis, he's going to get access to their spell, their prayer, which turns off wards, which feels pretty good as well. So, he's not setting the world on fire, which is funny because he's on a dragon, obviously. But he's also not terrible. I wouldn't be, if I were you and you're I'm a pretty casual gamer, Rob, then I think you're very safe picking this guy up. I think he's good enough. He's very survivable, and you've got some real options there, which I think is fun. You're not going to be disappointed with having him as a name character in a Stormcast army, my personal opinion. Now let's go look at him in his Army of Renown. So his Army of Renown is coming out, and we get to see what the rules are. The rules for these, it's called the Draconith Skywing, is that you get Krondys, that's right, the giant dragon Krondys, his brother Karazai, and Stormdrake Guards units of 2 or more models, because you can have a Stormdrake Guard unit of 1 model. They all become battle line, which is very funny. So you can have Ionis, and then you can have Krondys and Karazai, the Sons of Draconith, as battle line, which is very fun. I really like that. That's very cool. That's very fun. But they all become battle line. So you can just have a big giant monster mash of dragons if you want to, which is cool. Draconith Guardians in the armies are selfless bodyguards, so they've also got this Draconith bodyguard rule, which is, if you want, when some damage would happen to Ionis, then you can pass them on to a unit of Stormdrake Guard on a 4+, but then those damage that damage done to that unit can't be negated. I don't really know why you would do this. Stormdrake Guard are really effective for their points cost. They're really cool. They're very good, and they're kind of weird to have as a bodyguard unit for a dragon because they're also dragons. It's an odd rule, and I don't really see why you would be passing wounds off to the Draconith Guard, to the Stormdrake Guard, because they're just better than Ionis's anyway. So it's kind of a weird flex. But they do get access to some new monstrous actions. So they've got monstrous rampages. They've got 2. They've got stun and impact tremors. So these are only Draconith models, and you can only take Draconith models in the Army of Renown. So you can only take Ionis, you can only take Krondys and Karazai, and you can only take Stormdrake Guard. And the 2 different monstrous rampages are Stun, which is really good, and Impact Tremors. Stun is pick 1 enemy unit within 3 inches of this unit and roll a dice. On a 3+, subtract 1 from the wound rolls for attacks made by that unit in the following combat phase. This is very effective. This is very, very good. -1 to wound is a great debuff, probably the best debuff in the game outside of not piling in and stopping movement and stuff. This is the best kind of in combat or dice mechanic change. -1 to wound is really good. Really like that. And then the other one, Impact Tremors, is on a 3+ again. You pick a unit within 3 inches, and that unit can then only make a 1-inch pile-in versus a 3-inch pile-in. So that's not as good, but it's also not terrible as well. In the right situation, you could definitely pin a unit on a corner, make it so it can't pile in to attack you, which is really good because you want to try and reduce as much damage as coming into a dragon army as possible because they're very elite and they've got lots of those. So that's everything that we know so far. They've got very few wounds, to finish that thought. So that's all we know so far, but we do know that they're going to get 3 battle tactics, they're going to get some command traits, they're going to get some artifacts, and also 3 new prayers as well. But those are all in the Army of Renown. So the thing I'm interested in is Ionis as a piece outside of the Army of Renown. The Army of Renown, you don't really have any kind of creativity with it, and I think that's actually one of the interesting things I'd like you to leave in the comments if you have watched this video till the end, and the chat have also been having their thoughts and their opinions about this as well. What I find quite interesting is these Armies of Renown. Do people like them or do people not like them? Having seen recently a new player get into the game via an Army of Renown, I feel like it's a really good kind of just pick these models up, go play them. which I think is really effective. It's not for me, though. For me, I like list writing and I like list building. And Ionis works really well in a Cities of Sigmar army. I think he makes a really kind of interesting ally. And so for me, sorry, Carl, this is Carl the Coffee. For me, that's the interesting thing that I've been like thinking about as soon as I've seen this. The Armies of Renown is either going to be good or not good, and you don't really get much creativity around that kind of like list building. So I'm interested in what you think. Anyway, let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video.